Jambo, everybody, Jambo. Jambo Karibu. Welcome to 2024, our first episode in 2024. And I just want to say Happy New Year. Even though we're wrapping the month of January, I still want to say Happy New Year. And may this year be full of great things. As we continue this year, I pray that you'll have wonderful blessings on your way. So today, my guest is Dean Chalak Richards, and she's now Dean Chalak Guinness. And I want to just have you guys say a good prayer for her, send her good vibes as the year starts. And I pray that we will have a great conversation today, and that everything that she shares with us, or the conversations we have together today, will be a blessing unto you, and that you will be able to grow from it, learn from it, get challenged by it, and that we will be better people than we are by the things that we listen to, the things that we do, and how we even protect ourselves emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I think we have a wonderful episode for you, and it is Black Women in Higher Education. We will wrap up the year and look into the future of 2024, and then dive into the struggles that we've seen Black women having in higher education in the last few months. So I know that's a heavy topic, but hey, let's do it. Jambo Dingenes.
Jambo, Dr. Akumbu, how are you doing today?
God, you can call me Ruth. It's fine. Congratulations, Mrs. Guinness.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, the pictures are so beautiful. You look amazing.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you.
love the picture.
Thank you.
Uh,
It was a lovely day.
yeah, where was that? Was that in
Hawaii. We got married in Hawaii.
Oh, that background. That's what it was. It's very beautiful.
Yes.
Very
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you.
Ah, congratulations to both of you, and wish you a really, really wonderful relationship.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. So we're back on it again,
We
and
are.
this last few months have been a little bit rough for Black women in higher education, and um, our last episode dealt on some of the issues with affirmative action and DEI. And before I left, we didn't get a chance to do a wrap up for the year. And I would just love for you to just reflect a little bit on last year in general, as far as DIB issues are concerned, especially regarding the legal department of things, and then maybe looking ahead before we even dive into this challenging news that we've had in the last few months with Black women in higher ed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for DEIB, to your listeners, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is the new letter that's been added on there in many places.
Mm-hmm.
It was, in general, I think, a rough year last year. I think that we saw a lot of news across businesses and higher ed of opposition to work that is very important, and gains that I think many of us thought were sort of settled in the way that the year before people in reproductive rights may have said, we thought this was all settled, and then there came the Dobbs decision. I think in many ways, people in sort of the diversity, equity, inclusion world would say there are things that we thought were settled and that now have received opposition. I think last year we saw an unprecedented number of states and cities and local ordinances dealing with even things as small as children's books and their ability to have children's books that spoke about what we thought were sort of settled pieces of history, right? And so I think what we saw last year was a year of challenges. I can still be optimistic. I try to be. My faith pushes me towards hope and not despair. In that we saw those challenges and they were not without their own set of pushback, right? And so certainly on both sort of the legislative front and then of course with the Supreme Court decision that came out last June, the Students for Fair Action versus Harvard and UNC, which now many are trying to take out of the realm of education and apply to businesses. And so we've seen suits being brought in sort of a variety of ways where they're attempting to use that precedent as it is.
Isn't that what we kind of predicted?
That is what we predicted, right? We spoke about it and we said, this is what people are going to do. And so I think, we ended last year on that there were challenges. And I think in some ways, in a good way, it was galvanizing those who do the work to sort of gird our loins and fight, and to be smart about what we're doing, to be thoughtful, but also to find those places where we want to stand our ground, to use that phrasing, where we want to say, okay, this is worth it. And we're going to continue to do this really hard work. And do that. I think something that also emerged a lot last year were conversations around burnout for those who do this kinds of work, especially when dealing with challenges, and conversations about what it looks like to protect ourselves in a community. There's a phenomenal minister, oh my goodness, Trisha Hersey, I want to say, who focuses a lot on the concept of rest and what it looks like to have rest as a form of liberation, and that not just being how many hours of sleep did you get in a night, but how are you creating environments where you, your spirit, your soul, your body, your emotions are able to rest, to take care of yourself as a DEI practitioner, more than just a bubble bath, although I love a good bubble bath and getting your nails done, right? But are there structures that we're putting in place to support ourselves internally, individually, and as a community of practitioners so that we can continue to engage in this fight?
Right. And I think the way you wrapped it and tied it in is the way I'm looking at it now is how we are moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just what happened in 2023. It's how are we moving forward into 2024 and into the future. And you touch on a few things like the resting, the taking care of yourself, which I believe when I look now, switching a little bit and moving this forward into 2024 and Black women in higher ed, I personally would like to focus on Black women in higher ed because just recently we have seen Claudine Gay resign. Some people, personally, I think that it's not just because of the pressures of the job and the one interview. I think it's also a way of her giving herself space to be human and to rest and to protect her mental health in the whole process. Which for me, there are people that say, oh, I'm phrasing myself funny. I'm like, for me, and then I'll go say something else. So people that say she should have stayed and fight. But as a Black woman, I say she should have left, and she left, and she did the right thing by leaving, not just because of what they accused her of, which is the plagiarism and the not speaking up for the Jewish students firmly. But I think she should have left for her own mental health. And I say that because now I look at people like Antoinette from Lincoln University, Antoinette Candia-Bailey, right? I look at her situation and I say, could she have left sooner? Could she have just walked away sooner. And then I look at Temple University, JoAnne Epps, and I ask myself, what is it about this trend? What
Mm-hmm.
Claudine Gay different from Antoinette and Mrs. Epps or Miss Epps? Is the
Mm-hmm.
fact that one walked away. The two others wanted to be the strong Black woman that we are constantly reinforced as strong Black women in society. We're not given space to rest. So we tell ourselves, we got to push through. We have to be strong. We have to keep going. We can do this. That really continuous push denies us that opportunity to give ourselves that space to rest. Do nails, like you said, or not do nails, like I'm looking right now. What does it take to get you in that place of rest, right?
Yeah.
And I really like the way you're pointing us moving forward. Do you want to contribute to that? I would like us to build around that.
Yeah, no, I think there's so much there. So I think you hit on something, and I was looking it up to make sure I was right, that Zora Neale Hurston said that Black women are the mules of the earth, and she said this back in
Mm.
1937. And the concept there is that we are the ones who are worked to death. We are the ones who bear the burdens. Mules were the pack horses, right? Carried everything for everyone and from all sides.
Mhm.
And that happens regardless of industry. Around Dr. Gay's resignation, you saw so many Black women, not just in higher ed, who spoke to the experience across industry of being the first, the only, and
Mhm.
the burden that creates. There's a burden of perfection that accompanies that, right? Because I am the first or the only or one of the few, we have to perform in a way that allows us to hold the door open because
Yeah.
we believe, which may be true. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's also our belief or a belief that's put upon us. Well, if I fail as Chalak Richards Guinness,
Mhm.
will they hire Dr. Akumbu, or will she need to be 10 times better,
Mm.
right? If I
Yes.
do this one thing wrong, does that devalue what I'm saying for the next marginalized person who I'm
Mhm.
trying to bring to the table? And
Mhm.
then, well, what am I modeling for these other people? What am I modeling for my students? What am I modeling for my colleagues? And it creates for us this burden of perfection and the need to carry. And one of the things that several years ago, actually, one of my mentors said to me is the other side of that is that the other people know how much we care, and they
Mm.
will use it against us,
Oh, wow.
right? So if they know that deep in your heart you have a care for other Black women in the academy and you want to hold open doors, that becomes something to play on. Oh, well, we really want you to be the one to do the presentation because isn't it wonderful when they see you? We really want you to be the one to do this. Can you teach the extra class? Can you mentor this person? And even if they don't ask, because we're one of the few or the only, we get the phone calls. Our
Mhm.
counterparts don't get the phone calls. And that goes across industry, right? If you're thinking, I want to break into business, you go to a business, you look up, you see a Black woman in leadership, you're going to send her the email or the LinkedIn request saying, I was wondering if we could get coffee. And someone who's there because they want to provide opportunities and mentor and give back are going to go, I don't know if I have the time, but let me figure it out because I want to be there for this Black woman.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it overwhelms us and
Mhm.
overburdens us in a way that, as we've seen, is not sustainable.
Right.
And I put the fault of that squarely on the systems, in this
Mm.
case, on higher ed.
Mhm.
We all know it's unsustainable. We
Mhm.
do. Are we willing to be deliberate about hiring more Black women so that all of my Black students don't feel like they've got me and one other professor to go to? So that's not fair, right? Like it's just practically not fair. But if
Yeah.
all we do is go, oh man, thank you so much, the students love you, and we don't go, let's be deliberate in our next search for an administrator or a faculty member to bring someone in, then what are we doing? We're not really committed to
Right.
that. That goes to
Right.
your point that there does come a point where we need to take stock and go, is this sustainable, not just for the other people, but for me? What is the cost
Mm-hmm.
that I am paying to do all of this?
Right.
Is it a legacy that's going to last? And everyone, I think, will make a different decision. I think there are some who would have been in Dr. Gay's position and gone, yes, I can do this, and that's okay for them. I think it's also completely okay for Dr. Gay to have gone, I'm not doing this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to deal with people impugning my academic integrity by standards that did not exist at the time and quite frankly are not being equally applied across the profession. If we're going to be going back over everyone's dissertations and papers from 15 to 20 years ago, then let's do that. But if you're not serious about doing it, why am I putting myself through the ringer? Where now every conversation becomes me defending myself, and not us actually dealing with the substantive matters at hand.
Right.
It is perfectly okay for her to go, this is not worth it.
Yes.
It is not worth it. The impact is not worth it. Checkbox, moving on. You know, that is okay. And it's okay for someone else to go, I feel like it's worth it and I'm going to stick to, and here are my support systems that are going to carry me so that I can come out of this on the other side healthy and whole and an appropriate model for those people who are coming behind me. But we have to ask ourselves pretty regularly, especially in the academy, is this worth it? You know, I think, sorry, I know I'm going on, but one more thing. I think about a sociologist, MacArthur genius, Tressie McMillan Cottom, who has written brilliant books. One of the most recent, I think that her most recent that came out is Thick. Just brilliant woman and sociologist and real, like both at, I believe she's at Duke, but I could be wrong. She could be at UNC, and I know that's the whole thing, so I'm not trying to get into that. But I want to give her flowers as a Black woman who's a brilliant thinker, brilliant scholar. She's done public scholarly work, as well as, of course, her academic work. And one of the things that she says regularly in her work is directed towards Black women is the institution cannot love you. And I think remembering that, right? The institution, as it is set up, cannot love you. It was not made for us. It is not designed for our flourishing. It cannot love us. It will not take care of us. And we have to stop sometimes and go, is the price that I am paying worth it for an institution that cannot give me back what I am giving to it?
Wow.
And that may help us recalibrate, you know, salary negotiations, titles, workloads. That may help us on days go, is this worth it for something that cannot love me? You know, and
that is deep. That is really, really deep. That is deep. I reflected this week on somebody saying something similar in that line of thought, as saying, I don't understand why this is not happening for me. It's not happening for me. I was like, well, the system was not built for you. And for the system to work for you, the system has to change completely. If the system doesn't change, 1,000 years from now, we are going to keep facing the same things. And as much as we advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, we have to remember that we are fighting, or not fighting, maybe that's a strong word. We are getting into industries that were not designed for us, like you are saying. And as we, Black women, getting into industry spaces that were not designed with us in mind, how are we really navigating it? Are we prepared to actually go through the pain that it comes with maybe breaking some molds or some barriers? Like we say, we're constantly breaking the ice ceilings. Like you said, we were the mules. Okay. Knowing that is half the battle. really going in there and accepting it is another battle. And then thinking about when you go to work and coming back home, how is your home space? Because I don't think that this whole mule thing is centered only in the workplace. It's
Oh,
also
absolutely not.
yeah,
It's our relationships, right? It's our expectations that people have of Black women to bear it all, to do it
yes,
all, to be all knowing, all seeing, all powerful. And sometimes we have to remind them, we're not Jesus. I'm just Chalak. I'm not Jesus. I can't need you. Whoever you believe in, I'm not.
yes,
I'm not.
I'm not that.
I am not
Exactly.
that. I
Yes,
am but a
yes,
woman who is trying to go to work, go home, and buy some shoes and pay her bills on time. That's all
exactly.
I've got.
Yeah. And I'm
And
entitled to cry. I'm entitled to say I'm tired. I'm entitled to ask for help because that whole male mindset or that whole strong black woman mindset has allowed us not to be able to ask for help when we need to or cry when we need to. And one thing growing up that I heard was crocodile tears, right? So when
mm,
the black woman cries, it's crocodile tears. Like I don't know whether you had that in
yes, I've heard that expression as
because I'm
well.
like, is it an African thing? Because
No,
when
I think it's diasporic.
yeah, it's like so it's like crocodile tears, but you have to just keep going because the moment you start to cry, it's crocodile tears. I can tell you men have said that to me many times. And as a result, I've had to come to this place where I just automatically become I don't know how to be vulnerable around a man.
Mhm.
I just don't know how because every time I try to be vulnerable, I'm told crocodile tears. I think crocodile tears. So the self care now becomes how do I navigate spaces which were not designed for me? Why also struggling in spaces where I am supposed to be loved, cherished, protected, and all of that? I mean,
I think that there's two things there, right? The first is, and actually this just came to mind that I want to just point out when we say this goes across industry.
mhm,
In the rollout and the publicity for The Color Purple, the new movie that just came
mhm,
out,
mhm,
Taraji P. Henson
mm,
became
mhm.
very vulnerable and
Mhm.
as a successful, highly successful, Oscar nominated, Emmy winning, Golden Globe winning, right? Like successful Black actress in speaking to the systemic inequalities that she has experienced
Exactly.
and shared it from a place of vulnerability. And what stood out to me, and one of the moments that went viral in an interview,
Mhm.
is she was sitting with her castmates, Danielle, oh my gosh, Brooks, and Fantasia Barrino, and
Mhm.
said, what breaks her heart is that she has been fighting this for 20 plus years and
Yes.
sees them coming behind her. And she just wants to know that it will be better for them than
Yes.
it was for her. And
Yes.
she was in tears, and
Yeah.
they were in tears saying, thank you. Right? When they experienced inequities on their set, she picked up the phone and used her privilege as being the more senior person to call the other Black woman and say, we are not getting treated appropriately. And then that other Black woman had to use her privilege to say, treat them the way they're supposed to be treated,
Mm,
which
yes.
requires us to be in community. For me to know I can call a Dr. Akumbu and say, Jambo, I need something. And she will
Yes.
say, let me call the person who can support you, and
Mhm.
be in that community for each other. And I
Mhm.
think that's that first. How do we navigate the space? I
Yes.
think it's, putting aside that everybody isn't for everyone, right? I'm not saying I'm going to be best friends with every Black woman that walks the earth. I
Yeah.
can put aside,
Before you
though,
move on,
community.
let's throw in.
Yes,
Oh, I was going to say before we move on, let's give Monique her flowers in this
yes,
because
yes,
she even if we might not agree with how she went about it, I think she started that voice. Like others have come before her, but I think
yes.
Monique also really really brought that to life and gave the power that Tiraji was able to take. Like, it's like passing the baton. What I use the people
Exactly.
say,
I
it's like
think
passing the
we
baton. Sorry for
exactly as
cursing
you're
you, but I
saying. No,
really
no, no,
wanted
exactly as
to.
you're saying.
Mm,
It's a continuity. It's a
mhm,
line of
mhm.
saying I'm not getting treated appropriately, and everyone. And I thank you for saying that, because I think that illustrates all of us are going to have a different way of doing it, right? And
Mhm,
that's okay. And that goes to my point of what I was saying. I don't have to be personally best friends. We don't have to go for drinks, do our nails together, talk on the phone 24 hours a day. I
exactly.
can be committed to your success
Amen.
as another Black woman. And I think that's that first strategy for when we're in these places that were not designed for us, that do not truly, at the end of the day, care about our well being or our advancement. And so far as it doesn't benefit them, right? Like,
That's
they
right.
care about us in that if we're doing good work and we make them look good,
Yes.
speaking very frankly, right? And
Yes.
that's across industries and across places.
Mhm,
But the moment we're too much, there's a theory, it's called the pet to threat
mhm,
theory. And it came out, I think, at first in 2012 or 2013, and
mhm,
has recently resurfaced in some of these conversations. The
mhm,
pet to threat theory that Black women are brought in as the pet and sort of very, lauded and patted on the head and treated so well and sort of put up, right? And look at them, they're so shiny, they have all the answers. And then as the cycle goes on and that woman starts to go, and they're made all kinds of promises, like the new pet. We're going to get you a pretty little bed, or we're going to do all the things, or we're going to make it exciting for you. And when they go, okay, well, can we do the thing now? What is the structural support? This is a change I see. I've got these accomplishments. We need to do this thing. They
yep,
slowly become a threat. They
yeah.
become a threat to that office or that industry, right? That institution where
Yeah.
they've moved from being the sort of golden child to they're a
Mhm.
problem, they're asking too much, they're not accomplishing whatever it may be. And what
Yeah.
we need is to be committed
Mhm.
first. The first strategy is being committed to supporting each other. And
Right.
that might be at our institutions, but it may not be, because the truth of the matter is there's only so many of us across industry in any job or
Oh,
place.
very true.
But we can be committed to supporting one another. We can be committed to saying, your success is my success. You get the promotion, amazing. I get this job, great. I am happy for you. I support you. What do you need? Call me if you need a thing. I'm going to be right there beside you. I'm going to help you take some of those burdens off. I'm going to, if I've come ahead of you, I'm going to give you language you can use in the salary negotiation. If I'm behind you, I'm going to offer to do that research that can be helpful, right? Like, it doesn't mean we like each other,
Mhm,
but it does mean that we recognize in a system that is designed to automatically provide support for other people,
mhm,
we at least can provide support for ourselves. I
mhm,
think that's one. I think two is being very clear eyed about where we're going, what they can actually accomplish,
mhm.
what our role is there.
Yeah.
And as the pet, I'm not going to be fooled into believing that, you know, 6 months from now is whatever. And if we're clear eyed, then at that first part of the cycle, then we can get as much as we can out of it. We
Mhm,
know where we are in the cycle to go, this is my moment to to put in place this structural change, to put in place this thing for myself, for others, whatever, that can
mhm,
make meaningful change, because the day will come, not may, the day will come where someone opposes it. If
mhm,
I set it up properly, strategically, they
mhm,
can't just undo it, right?
mhm,
It's not just like, oh, we do this lunchtime event. This is a structural thing that cannot be removed. Uh,
mhm.
and I think those are things where, this third one is coming from premarital counseling.
Yeah. Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Just to be good about expectations, right? So, like, people disappoint you when they don't meet your expectations. But if you haven't communicated your expectation, how can they meet it?
Mhm.
You
That's
have to communicate, this is what I expect from you. And then the other person can be like, oh, girl, that is unreasonable. There's no way I can do that. Like, you want that all the time? Absolutely not. That's not going to happen. Or they can go, oh my gosh, that's so easy. We can add this to it, right? But
Mhm.
Are we communicating? Are we clear about what our expectations are for ourselves?
Mhm.
Are we, and I think this takes practice in how to communicate that, right? Like to be able to say, wow, my 3-year goal in this role is blank to my supervisor, and the supervisor go, that's not reasonable at all. Like that's not going to happen. Or, oh my gosh, to accomplish that, you're going to need all of these resources. You know, do you have those, right? But start putting the expectations out there in that place so that we can assess the day that it's not worth it anymore and the cost isn't worth it.
Mhm.
You know, and I think my final thing is this is for myself that I have to work through with my therapist was knowing who is a Black woman. And I will say that, like, go to therapy as a Black woman to the extent you can find another Black woman.
Mhm.
It is a life-changing experience because there are things I don't need to explain that
Mhm.
she just understands, right? But nonetheless, is knowing for yourself, you may never need to say to anyone else, with the institution, what is my line?
Mhm.
What is the line that I will not cross?
Mhm.
Because you're going to be asked to make compromises all the time. It's the nature of the world, especially when we don't run it, when we don't own it, right? There's going to be a compromise. It can be as small as I thought I was going to leave at 5:30, I'm leaving at 6:30, right? Like that can be a small compromise.
Mhm.
Or it can be something big, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
I'm being asked to put my name on something that I fundamentally don't agree with. That is
Mhm.
a big compromise.
Right.
Knowing ahead of time what is my line, what is the thing that I will not compromise, and am I prepared if that day comes to say, forget it all and walk away? And I
Yes.
think that might be some of what happened with Dr. Gay. Is
Yeah.
she knew and she said, I'm walking away. Forget
Yeah.
it. But you can't do that if you aren't prepared. And to your segue, and if you don't have the personal support systems
Mhm.
that will enable that, because it is a privilege to say, just quit your job. Like, we can't, everybody can't just quit their job
Yeah.
and be like, woo, and not worry about food and a roof over their head
Yeah.
and car insurance or bus fare and we
Yeah.
often have familial obligations. There's often elderly, or other extended
Mhm.
family who are counting on us for something, or community obligations. Like there's a lot of people who depend on us being gainfully employed.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
knowing that, like, this is my line
Yeah.
gives us, I think, the ability to go to those people and
Mhm.
say, my line is getting crossed and I can't keep doing this.
Mhm.
And it is
Mhm.
going to cost you me, right? My heart breaks for Dr. Candia-Bailey's family because ultimately it's not Lincoln Memorial that's suffering. They are suffering. It's
Yes.
her family that bears that burden for the rest of
Yes.
their lives.
Yes.
And, I think I'm going to be really, really honest and vulnerable. We saw that news, and my brand new husband, like we saw it 2 weeks after we'd gotten married,
Mhm.
turned to me and he was like, you will quit your job before I lose you.
Mm.
Period.
That is the home support that I'm talking
It's the
about.
home support, right? And it might not always be from a spouse or a partner.
Yeah,
I
it could
have
be
a
a
really
friend.
good friend who's in a PhD program, a Black woman in a PhD program. She
Mhm.
was in education for 15-ish years and then has chosen to get her PhD to continue in some things. And she's not married and she lives far away from her family, far away from me, quite frankly. But I called her and I was like, this place does not love us.
Mhm.
The day that this no longer works, you will be under my roof if you have to
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
Because no, I will
Yeah.
not lose you
Yeah.
over these institutions.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes, again, that goes back to the first, our personal
Mhm.
support systems of friends. I'm very blessed to, at least for right now, have found a partner who's extremely, I mean, I say for right now because who knows life, right? Like he's great now,
Right.
not good.
Yeah.
But, you know, but I know that I also have a sisterhood that if I was not married and I called them and said my line is being crossed, and if I quit my job, I don't know where I'm going to live, they would say, well, it sounds like you're on my couch for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want each other more than we want these titles. I'm sorry, I was going for way
No,
too long.
no, you're helping me not cry, right? So it's like it's heavy. It's heavy stuff that you're saying, and it's things that needs to be said. I don't think today for me it's not just about the intellectual part of it. It's about this. It's about the sisterhood, finding this space, right? Like, okay, I know, can I call Dean Chalak if things are going? Honestly, being 100% transparent also. I did, when I saw that news hit, I said to myself, who are my sisters in this business? I said that to myself, and you came to mind. I was like, if I was in a situation, I would call her and I would say, what do I do? Not just from a personal relationship with Belt, but also from that legal standpoint. Like, okay, who can I turn to? Because it's hard. It's very, very hard, and getting that was really hard. And even generally, like daily, working with students, working with colleagues. Right now, I am very grateful. Has given me good colleagues. But you never know. The classrooms are constantly changing. Which student is going to have a pick a bone with me, and how is it going to go down? Who is going to have my back when things go down? Will the institution love me?
And the other part of it is the well-meaning students, right?
Yes.
So, and maybe more because of the way my role shapes rather than being pure faculty in that kind of way. But I know even our pure faculty, particularly female faculty, particularly women of color, we get it where I hear a lot of trauma from my students, and I'm not using that word lightly, right? I hear a lot of their microaggressions. I hear a lot of their eyes opening to a system. They're in the legal field, they read a case, and they're coming to me going, these people really didn't think we were human. And I'm like, yeah, and some still don't, and like, I hear a lot of it. I walk them through a lot of processing. I help them think through a lot of, how that system is built, and the imposter syndrome that's sometimes thrust upon them, the bias that they're dealing with from other people, the comments they've heard, sometimes from classmates, sometimes from people not even affiliated with the institution, telling them, oh, you're in law school because of affirmative action.
Yes.
Good thing you got in when you did, because that's going to change, right? They are dealing with all of this. And we, because we care, and they know we care, they come to us to share it. And so even on a well-meaning side, we can end the day heavy.
Yes.
Heavy, because we're going, you and I will feel like Taraji. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all of this.
I don't get paid enough.
No, right? I don't get paid enough. And it would be one thing if I didn't get paid enough, but they didn't have that complaint anymore.
Right.
It would be one thing if I didn't get paid enough, but I saw a measurable difference.
Right.
In the legal profession, at least, the number by percentage of Black attorneys has not changed in 20 years.
Seriously?
In 20 years, in the early 2000s, 2001 to 2021, actually, let me be exact. In 2001, the percentage of attorneys who self-identified as Black was 4.9%. In 2021, it was 5%.
What?
In 20 years, Dr. Akumbu.
That is insane.
And what that tells me is there is no amount of pipeline program, there's
No.
no amount of LSAT support, there's
Yes.
no amount of individual mentorship. I'm not saying we shouldn't keep doing all those things, right? But
Mhm.
individuals have made concerted attempts in all that time to increase that percentage, and it has not changed in 20 years. So that's sometimes where I look at these people and I'm like, don't give me all this foolishness about affirmative action when that number has stayed the same for 20 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, a bunch of unqualified Black people are not being let into law school and
Exactly.
becoming lawyers, or we would see more of them. And
We would.
that cannot be explained by, well, people are retiring or, leaving the practice, because the number of law students increased, although not by much, approximately 7.8%. But 7.8% to 5 is, there are systemic
Mhm.
structural things that are at play because
Mhm.
the system was not designed for me to be a lawyer and
Mhm.
for me to succeed,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And again, it would be different, I think, if we were all sacrificing ourselves, you and I, is slightly further along that path and going, well, at least I see the number increasing. At least I see the change happening. The
Mm.
sacrifice is worth it.
Yeah.
What can cause
Legacy.
us to turn to despair is someone like me, where I'm like, my job is to dig into those numbers and then go, it's
Yeah.
not changing. And I have to, this is my faith. I have to go, there has to be hope. It cannot all be despair. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, I'm going to turn apathetic and say, what's the point? And we should all just go home, right?
Mm.
And that's where we go ancestral and think, okay, who are the people? What did they do?
Yeah.
Sometimes we need a bigger lens.
Yes.
I need to zoom out and go, things aren't great. They are currently better than 1952. Like,
That's true.
it's not, it is better. In my mother's lifetime, the world has changed,
Yes.
right? At least, okay, I will give that, right? And that sometimes is what, for me, makes me go, there's a little bit of hope
Mhm.
available,
Mhm.
and that says, and I can decide to take a nap this and get some rest and take care of myself and live to fight another day,
Mhm.
because the fight need, and I use the word fight deliberately,
Yeah.
because it is a battle. We're in a war, and that fight does not need me to burn out and die early. It
Yes.
needs me to be able to say, I'm going to give up that battle to win the war. I'm going to go home. I'm going to call, one of my sister friends on my drive and talk to someone who cares about me. I'm
Mhm.
going to email Dr. Akumbu and go, am I crazy? And she's going to say, you're not crazy. This is exactly what happens. And I'm
Mhm.
going to gird up myself so that I can come back
Mhm.
and give my best within those boundaries. And then one day I might say, I'm still fighting, but not at this institution, and that's okay.
Right.
I don't see, and I think even her opinion, her editorial in the New York Times, I believe, said this.
Mhm.
Dr. Gay's resigning from the presidency at Harvard is not Dr. Gay resigning from the fight.
Right.
She left a position. She did not leave her ideology. She did
Mhm.
not believe in herself or the importance of her work. And she was very clear, it might look different. Okay, it's not going to be as president of Harvard. That doesn't mean she's not
Exactly.
going to continue doing things. We can leave a role and still be committed and supportive.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, I agree 100%. And that's the thing. That's the message for our
Mhm,
sisters out there that are in spaces where they are the only ones. You can leave and still continue the fight.
mhm,
If you cannot keep fighting where you are, it's okay to leave. It's
mhm,
okay to leave and continue the fight somewhere else. Write a book, start
mhm.
a podcast. I know you still have to pay bills, but seriously,
Yeah.
sleep on somebody a sister's couch. It's better than going down, because
Mhm.
the legacy. This is not a place where we're going to say this is a martyr, this is a martyr, and give saints hope. if you drop dead in that place, you're not becoming a saint. So
Amen.
you gotta leave. A few things as I was looking through for today that I also wanted to point out was the idea of when you're struggling and in your some of these spaces, what they say to you is, "Oh, you are so strong," and then I listen to those, and they say, "Oh, I know you can do it." So like listen carefully to the compliments that people give you when you're trying to be vulnerable. Are those compliments actually compliments, or are they just pushing you to complete burnout? So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I really felt that it hit me a lot when I was reading through everything people were saying. For example, I was looking at the list of things that were said about Miss Antoinette. Uh,
Mhm.
it was like, she never quits. She has an infectious smile. She's brilliant, brilliant personality, compassionate, confidence, strong black woman. Like all these strong black women
Mhm.
words and syndromes, and I want to really point this out because I do not want people to constantly look at this as compliments.
Yeah.
They are not usually compliments. And I don't want to see this list of all these wonderful things that people say about another sister. Like, I don't want to see that. Even a brother or sister, another black person, I don't want to see this list. So for me, what my takeaway was, if I am trying to be vulnerable about how hard something is, and somebody starts to pour down a list of how strong I am, how smart I am, how confident I am, and all of that, I'm going to have to check out of that conversation and go find
Mhm.
self-care somewhere else. Because when you're vulnerable, it's time for others to listen and see how they can support you, no matter how strong you've been in the past.
Unless they're saying you're so strong, you deserve a break, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, you're brilliant. Go take a vacation.
Yes.
I hear you saying that, and I believe you can do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to,
Yes.
And there is a colleague who said that to me recently, where I was just like, oh, I've got to get these, and I'm spinning around like I've got to get these 70 things done, and he said, oh my gosh, like you can absolutely do all of those things before lunch, but
Mhm.
you don't have to. Why are you doing this? Give it to me. I can do 4 of those. I promise. And she can do 7. This is not saying you can't do it. I know you can. I
Mhm.
am saying you don't have to do this.
Right.
And I think sometimes it's also going, hey, is there anyone in this space who's not just going to say, thank you for your vulnerability, but who's going to say, yes, you have the ability. You don't have to do this. Give
Yes.
it to me.
Yes.
Or when you go to them and say, I know I can do this, but actually, can you please lead that next meeting? Can you please chair that committee? Can you say no, right? Well, can you do this? No.
Yeah.
And what that I think is also a telling moment where you say, no, I can't do that right now. Well,
Mhm.
but you're so smart and you're so strong and I know you can do it. Oh, I know I can do it too. That wasn't my point. My point was not that I'm unable to. Like, let's be clear. I'm not doubting my
Yeah,
ability.
responsibility. Yeah.
My response was, I'm not going to.
Right.
Like, those are two different things, right? And I want to empower us. I
Yes.
say us because if my therapist watches this, she will laugh because she's been telling me this for a year, and I'm very good at saying it and not as good at doing it. So I'm going to hold myself accountable, right? But like, we can say no.
Mhm.
And that is part of the syndrome of being the only or the few, is we don't think we're allowed to say no to something. We think if we say no, it proves that we shouldn't be here, or it shows that we're not willing. You know what I mean? No, we can just say no. Oh no, that's not in my job description.
Yeah.
Or, okay, it's in my job description, but I have these other 5 priorities. So if I do this, I'm going to have to let one of them go. Is this more important than that?
Yes.
And we can set those boundaries. So even if we're not in the financial position or have the privilege of being able to say, okay, I'm leaving this institution, it doesn't serve me anymore, Can we say, but I don't need to be on 4 committees, I can only be on 2?
Mhm.
I'm going to roll off this year. Oh
Yes.
man, I'm so excited about that symposium. I don't need to lead it. I'm
Mhm.
happy to show up.
Mhm.
You know, like,
Yeah.
can we, for ourselves, with it, sometimes we don't even have to say it to them, can we renegotiate our boundaries to
Yes.
make it somewhere that is more sustainable and say, the institution is my employer, not my family, not my friend. I can tell it no,
Mhm.
and that's fine. And the legal part of me is, and as long as it's you are still performing your job
Yes.
the same way that everybody else is,
Yes.
if you are threatened while you are still performing your job,
Mhm.
the white men are on 2 committees, you're on 2 committees.
Right.
Is it a requirement of your job to be on 3? It is not. Therefore, if you now get threatened from your employment because you have moved from 3 committees to 2, you may need to speak with HR and you may need to speak with an employment attorney,
Yes.
right? We need to feel confident in saying, I'm doing the job I was asked to do. I'm performing the way I'm supposed to. There is no requirement for me to go above and beyond.
Right.
It is not required. I've done my above and beyond time.
Yes. And to add to that, if people don't believe you, I want to point them back to what Miss Claudia-Bailey said. She said her evaluation was 36 over 100, even though she was working long hours, staying longer, doing all these extra things. Her evaluation did not reflect any of those things. So self-care is absolutely important. All the things you've said is absolutely important. And if you get to that point, yes, definitely HR is very important, because
Yes.
you are not going to drop dead over an 36% evaluation when you've given everything you've got plus your life. No.
And that's a very practical, again, the institution cannot love you. I
Yes.
will say, protect yourself.
Mhm.
If you start to, because we all, most of us are smart enough when we get to this point to
Yeah.
start to figure out when the wind starts to shift.
Yes.
BCC your personal email on that email.
Mhm.
Save yourself a copy of the positive evaluations.
Mhm.
The students that email you and say, your class is the best I've ever taken, you're the best professor, get your evals, download them somewhere that you can save them. How many presentations did you do? Keep that record. Keep a record for yourself of how you performed. If they don't have metrics for you to be able to gauge your performance, create some. Go to that monthly meeting with your boss and say, oh my gosh, I realized that we never talked about how you're going to know I'm successful. These are the 5 ways I've come up with. Do you agree? Great. Now, based on those, so when you get that evaluation that is not reflective of your actual performance, you have data, you have the receipts. We love, Black people, we say, we choose the receipts. We have receipts. You
Yeah.
have it and you're not scrambling and you've got
Yeah.
something to back you up so you can say, this evaluation does not reflect my performance and here's how I can prove it. You
Yes.
said that you would gauge my interaction with students based on these 5 things. I have all of this to show that.
Mhm.
Boom. You said that my performance is based on my teaching evaluations. I have a 4.5 out of 5. You said my performance is based on my attendance in these committees. I've been on 2 for the past year. I was chair of one. So where is this 36 out of 100 coming from?
Coming from.
And that's not an indictment of Dr. Bonnie at all. I'm not saying
No.
she
No.
should have done. I'm saying, how can we learn
Learn.
ourselves so that ultimately we are making the choice of what we want to do? And when faced with it, then they have to either say, yeah, this is our bias, or they back down.
Yeah. I love it. That I think that really wraps it up, because you can fight a trail of paper.
Exactly.
Really can
And
fight.
even if you choose to, that's fine, right? See you in court. I'll go somewhere else, but I'm going knowing that I have protected myself. And quite frankly, keeping all that stuff helps you build your resume. Now you have all these things and you can add all the lines, you can build up your CV. You're not scrambling thinking, how many presentations did I do last year? And adding it. You've got a strong CV that
Yeah.
you can put out on the market when you want to, right? And if you choose to stay at the institution, you've got security in knowing this is how we measure my performance and I've performed.
Right. It's amazing. Thank you for saying that little part, because we don't want people to think that saving these receipts or all these data points that we're compiling is just to go start a fight with somebody else. No, it's also, it benefits us. It helps us have that confidence that we are doing what we were hired to do. We are doing the right job. If we go somewhere else, our skills are actually grounded.
Yeah.
The confidence, it boosts our confidence. It protects us. There's just so much value to doing that. Final words.
Well, my final words are that my hope for 2024, when we get to the end of the year and Dr. Kumar and I are doing a wrap up in December 2024 on her award-winning podcast, right? I'm putting this out there for you.
I receive
lives and everything, but that when we get to it, if 23 we would call a year of challenges, I hope that we can call 24 a year of overcoming. That is my
love that. I love
structurally, but also individually, that we'll look back and say, I overcame that thing. I overcame this. That thing followed me from 23 and I kicked it out in 24, right?
Yes.
And that we would see overcoming as part of this year.
Oh, thank you. I received that and I hope others receive it too.
Thank you so much for creating this space and being so vulnerable and so brilliant in all that you do.
Oh, you too. You too. I really appreciate your honesty and I just thank you for always bringing so much value.
Thank you.
I couldn't do it without you.
Like a sisterhood hug.
All right, my friend. We will talk again soon.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Bye. What a wonderful session. What a wonderful session. And this wraps it for this episode. Not sure when I'm going to be able to sit down and do another episode, but I am always so honored and blessed to have Dean Chalak Richards, now Guinness, on the show. So I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that you were motivated and encouraged, and I hope that you will do what it takes to protect yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and even financially. Spiritually, very, very important, spiritually. So as we go into 2026, oh yes, so we're going to be around until 2026, from my mouth to God's ears. I just really want to wish you lots of good things as we continue with this year. I want to wish you a lot of good things also, and overcoming, as Dean Richards have said, Dean Guinness have said, and I just pray that you will have blessings untold, you will have joy, you will have victories, and you'll overcome and overcome and overcome. I will see you on the next episodes. And while you're at it, remember to check out my store, link in the bio, pick out something good, have some tea, and let's talk again soon. All right.